Roll Tide, everybody, and thanks for hanging out with us here on Cover Crimson, brought to you by Pearl River Resort. Got a great show for you today. We're going to talk about Alabama's soon-to-be star tight end and what he brings to the table and what he's doing this offseason to get ready to be the guy at that position. How about Kadyn Proctor, one of the best analysts of offensive line? A little worried about Alabama's signature lineman, and we'll talk about Jett, who has been just killing it at the elite camps, Bama's latest commitment. All that right here on the show. Great to have you with us. Like, subscribe, thumbs up. I know I ask you guys to do that every day. It's because you can handle it. You're not Auburn fans. There he is, Clint Lamb. I'm Mick Gillispie. Great to see you guys today. And let's get right into it, Clint. Cuevas is someone that Alabama has to have. You talk about the tight end room, an area where we felt like there was a lot of weakness. They went out and not one, but two transfer portal candidates that they brought in and actually have become part of the program in that position. But this guy seems to be the one that Alabama is really going to rely on.
Yeah, I think he's going to be the primary tight end, right? And that's kind of last year he was kind of Alabama's third behind Robbie Utes and C.J. Dupree. C.J. Dupree was the primary, was mostly your inline guy. Now, granted, I think it would shock some people to know that Robbie Utes was actually considered the H tight end or the move tight end, but he actually saw a higher percentage of his snaps inline than C.J. Dupree did. Mostly because Dupree was the one that when they would flex the tight end and stuff, he was typically that guy because he was a little bit better of a receiver. But just because you got 12 personnel on the field doesn't mean you might have two guys, lining up in line. Obviously, Robbie Utes had gotten a lot bigger, could handle those in-line responsibilities. Certainly was Alabama's best blocker as far as from a move perspective, hitting a moving target out there in space. But also got better as far as being an inline guy. And then he had the ability to be a fullback and all that stuff. But he's gone. C.J. Dupree's gone. Josh Cuevas was technically Robbie Utes back up there at the H spot. Danny Lewis was C.J. Dupree's back up at the Y. And we haven't really seen Lewis too much yet. Obviously, you bring in Brody Dalton, who has a lot of inline ability, a solid quality blocker. Jack Samarco is probably more of a long-term play, but could certainly help out as far as the depth. But Cuevas, the reason I wanted to talk about this is Alabama posted some pictures from their media day yesterday on social media and was kind of going through, and I just noticed that Cuevas looked quite a bit thicker than he did last year. Last year he was listed at 6'3", 251 pounds. On the spring roster, he was listed at 252, so only a pound difference. But and I don't have any photos ready to go as far as last season, but when you look at him in this photo compared to where he was at a season ago, I think he's probably anywhere from 255 to 260, maybe even kind of pushing up there 257, 258, maybe even 260. I don't know if it's necessarily that big, but I just thought it was worth mentioning because I think they're preparing him to be their primary tight end. And a lot of times, if you're the primary, even though when they are in 12 personnel, Danny Lewis might be your inline and he might be your H, your move. But when there's only one tight end, he's got to be the inline guy if you have an inline guy. So that's why I think they needed to beef him up a little bit more. His blocking, decent blocker, but could certainly stand to kind of grow in that area. And I think adding more mass is certainly going to help him. So I thought that was an interesting development. I think Cuevas is in for a big season. Obviously, he's the best pass catcher, at least right now, the best established pass catcher in that tight end room. I mean, Mick, do you think he's going to be a big part of the offense?
Yeah, I really do. He's a guy that came from Washington to Alabama with this staff. They know him well. We saw glimpses of what he's capable of last year. And then you're talking about, who knows how the transfers are going to be. But you're talking about a room that in spring practice, like no one was available. And it was definitely an area where you're like, man, we need some help. And they went and got that. But I think that he's kind of poised to potentially be the next really, really big time tight end that Alabama's had. And I mean, I don't want to throw him in there with OJ Howard and Irv Smith and those guys, but he could definitely do that. You know, he's big. He can catch the ball. He can make plays. He's faster than you think he is. You know, I mean, and he's experienced. You know, and I think that's what really sets him apart from everyone else is that he's gotten snaps. He's been in the games.
Yeah, he's gotten a lot. I mean, obviously, you know, dating back to he played some at Washington. Cal Poly is where he came from. He actually had a pretty significant role. He was like their main tight end prior to getting to Washington, but he's now been with Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb. This is going to be his second season with Ryan Grubb, but his third year with Kalen DeBoer. So obviously there's a lot of familiarity there. And he, you know, if he can improve the blocking, I think he could be a really good option for Alabama because the blocking is a pretty important element as far as outside tackle type of, you know, success or lack thereof. A lot of that's going to be dictated based off of the tight end. But he's just I think he's a reliable pass catcher who can really be a complementary piece to what we think Alabama's going to have at wide receiver. And so I did want to mention and talk to him because I do think he's going to be a pretty important piece to Alabama's offense this season.
Guys, we talked about this already. You know, we're presented by Pearl River Resort. We appreciate them. Dancing Rabbit Golf Course is definitely an awesome course that you can play without a membership. Hour and a half from Tuscaloosa, 2 and change from Birmingham. But I know a lot of you guys get out there and you golf and you like to go to different courses. It's a multi-million-dollar facility and it's right in your backyard. And when you do that, you want to look good. And we got you covered right here with Crimson 20, Rhoback.com. They have an excellent selection of golf gear that's comfortable. And that is honestly not for golf, I wouldn't think, but it looks fantastic as well. The hoodie, because I have that one. But use our code Rhoback.com and use that code Crimson20 and take advantage of it. It's that time of year. You're going out. You want something that's breathable and comfortable. And they have a bunch of really cool styles, too. A lot of awesome Alabama gear at Rhoback. So, and then tell us in the comment section what you guys thought about it. Cole Cubelic's one of the best. I really like Cole. I know he's an Auburn guy, but I like Cole. I like listening to what he has to say. I think he breaks down film as well as anyone. And he's a little worried about Kadyn Proctor. Fill us in on where he's coming from on this. I kind of feel like there's a very high expectations for Proctor this year, that everyone's kind of expecting him to make this huge jump. And for Alabama to have the type of success that they want to have, and that's college football playoff and a national championship, they really need him to be a star player.
Yes, they do. This Alabama offensive line has got high expectations. PFF obviously has Alabama with the number one offensive line returning in college football for 2025. And when you talk about, you know, the success that we're expecting Alabama's offense to have, the offensive line is going to play a massive part in that. Cubelic, he actually joined Greg McElroy's latest episode on Always College Football and was discussing the offensive line. And I think in his rankings, he might have had Alabama's offensive line ranked number 4 in the SEC, but I could be wrong. I'd have to go back and check, but I'll go ahead and read you his quote and we can kind of react to it. He said, "I'm a little bit worried about left tackle. Kadyn Proctor has had a little bit of a weight issue. It needs to be down for him to be great. This is the second consecutive spring that he won't really go. Those are valuable reps that are going to be gone. Now that could help your depth because the reps are going to somebody else. And if they need to fill that void, they're going to be able to do that. So that's a little concerning." And then later on, he said, "You've got a bunch of power that's going to be packed into that group." So he acknowledges the power with the offensive line. A lot of them have played snaps together, log snaps together, high ceiling. So he believes that there's concern, or at least some level of concern, when Kadyn Proctor, he's going to have to see it with him. But also he acknowledges that this offensive line, the fact that they've played quite a bit of football together, if things hit correctly, maybe a Cam Dewberry or a Geno Vandermark ends up stepping up and providing serviceable play at left guard. Now that you've lost Tyler Booker, he also acknowledges the ceiling with this group, but he's not as high, at least it doesn't seem like, on Kadyn Proctor as some of these people, these draft pundits, some who believe that he could potentially be the number 1 overall pick, which I think me and you have both agreed we're not there with him. I do think he's got first round potential. I think a guy his size definitely needs to lose weight, but he's not, guys that big can move like he can, but stamina, conditioning has kind of been a little bit of an issue. He's got to get better. What are your thoughts on Kadyn Proctor?
I kind of feel the same way you feel. I mean, we've talked about it before. But if he puts the energy into being the most dominant offensive lineman in the country, he could be. And I think that's what they've said about him from the very beginning, that he has the natural stuff to be like Kobe Bryant. Remember, they were describing him as a Kobe Bryant type of player. Hey, Kobe wasn't that good when he first came in, but you could see it. If he wants to replace Tyler Booker and he follows what Tyler Booker did, the work, the leadership, the discipline, the toughness, this guy could be the first pick in the draft because he's got all the talent. And he's at a position that is, in football, not just the NFL, but in college football, it's a premium position. Maybe some people feel like it's the most important position besides quarterback. So, we'll see. I mean, we're not around him every day. We don't know what he's doing. We see Cuevas beefing up. Looks like a machine. This guy's got millions and millions of dollars on the line if he gets dedicated. And what does our friend Shank always tell us? Shop the perimeter. Stay away from the center, right? And he was a guy that had to deal with his weight, and a lot of offensive linemen do. So I think Proctor is one of the keys to Alabama's season. And if he is totally locked in on what he needs to be locked in on to be his best, he's got all the talent and the ability to do that. But, from what I saw last year, he's inconsistent still.
Yeah, consistency is what he's got to work on. And that's consistency with his conditioning, like being able to sustain throughout the game. I think that he made substantial improvement. I've said this before, substantial improvement year 1 to year 2. Really wish he could have been healthy enough to get the reps, the much needed reps that he didn't get in the spring. But when you talk about, there was a reason this guy was a 5-star prospect coming out of high school. He's big, he's long, good movement, shouldn't be as effective in Kalen DeBoer's offense as he is. Now, granted, I'm not saying he's the perfect fit, but just when you look at him, it's like, I mean, you wouldn't look at a guy like that and say that's a very successful offensive tackle in a Kalen DeBoer system that requires a lot of athleticism, moving, getting out in space, but he makes it work. More so even to an extent, in my opinion, than Tyler Booker. And I think Tyler Booker made it work as well. Don't get me wrong, but I think Tyler Booker was less of a fit for a Kalen DeBoer offense than even Kadyn Proctor. And, Tyler Booker ended up being drafted number 12 overall. He was successful enough, and granted, you got to be more and more of a power-based scheme. Obviously, Kadyn Proctor, I think he would be better in a more power-based scheme that didn't ask us for as much movement and athleticism, but I think he has the ability to really play within any offense, but he's got to get better with his consistency. He's got to get in better condition. And, what'll be worrisome for me is if he doesn't take that next step, because I think last year's Kadyn Proctor, it's good. Don't get me wrong. It's a good left tackle, but I think more so for him, it's this guy made substantial strides year 1 to year 2. And if he can even do remotely something similar going from year 2 to year 3, that's very promising for, not only him, but Alabama's offensive line. Wilkin Formby, I think he's going to be a good tackle for Alabama as well, but I think there will be some growing pains and some hiccups. And so if you've got leakage at both tackle spots, if Kadyn Proctor isn't what he needs to be, then defenses can really feast. And it really doesn't matter how good Parker Brailsford is, or Jaden Roberts, or Cam Dewberry, or anybody on the interior. We saw that a few years ago with a guy like Chris Owens. And I think Wilkin Formby is not going to be anywhere close to that type of liability at right tackle. But if you combine him having some growing pains and some issues on top of Kadyn Proctor still not being consistent and providing some leakage, I just don't think that's a very good combination for Alabama. And, an offense that's really going to need to do everything that it can to help Ty Simpson or whoever ends up starting at quarterback long enough for them to get comfortable and confident. So that's something early against Florida State, obviously in the season opener. That's going to be something I'm going to be keeping an eye on because, if Kadyn Proctor can be a phenomenal first-round talent for Alabama at left tackle, I think that you're going to get good enough play at right tackle where you're going to have one of the best offensive lines in the country. But if Kadyn Proctor is just okay, he's good, nothing special, nothing to write home about. I don't know. I think that's probably where I'll start to worry. My hope is that at least that left side's pretty locked down.
Hey, you guys are looking at quarterbacks, and we're going to talk about quarterbacks. But before we do, I want to tell you about our friend Keith. He's the general manager at the Renaissance Ocean City, and they are champions. And he knows because he's helped build the Coastal Style Hotel of the Year back to back to back to back. Since 2020, this hotel has been dominant right there in Ocean City, Maryland. Beautiful view of the Atlantic coast. You got all the great restaurants and bar and food, the boardwalk. I've talked about it on the show every day. I feel like that's where we went, Ocean City. I used to have the, spring break Ocean City T-shirts. Love it. Absolutely love it. And it's a different experience than what you get when you come down to the Alabama coast and when you go to the Florida coast. And it's one that you should check out. So it's really awesome. And they got you covered there with an awesome hotel. The guys from the next round all gave it 3 thumbs up after they went a few years ago. Clint and I are trying to get over there as well. And I want you guys just to know that, hey, you're going to love it. All right, let's talk about Jett because he is climbing at the Elite 11. This guy's like all of a sudden he's at Iowa State. He's a 1A player in Nebraska. And now he's an Alabama commitment, and he's the talk of the recruiting world. It's like one move. Joining the Tide has definitely paid off for him, but he's a big dude. He kind of reminds me of Jay Coker, big guy. Coker was a tight end, remember? And then he went to quarterback, so he kind of learned the position towards the end of his high school career, and then obviously in college at Florida State, and then won a national championship at Alabama. This guy's played quarterback. And he's done it at an elite level, but it's 1A football. And now we're starting to see that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think the growth from day 1 to day 2 of this Elite 11 finals is what, you probably need to be paying attention to when it comes to Jett Thomalla. Because, they mentioned the day 1 standout performers, and there was, 11 guys listed, and he wasn't one of them. And then you go to day 2, and not only was he in that top 11, but he checked in at number 4. So, and granted, you look at like Matt Ponatowski, he was number 4 on day 1 and climbed to number 3 on day 2. You look at a guy like Bryson Beaver, he was number 6 on day 1 and was number 7 on day 2. So, the quarterbacks that Alabama, this group, this second wave that they kind of offered and were courting and pursuing, there's multiple of them there, and they're all doing pretty well. But Ponatowski, nothing shocking. Just him mechanically and the footwork and he's very good on that front, which is surprising because you would think somebody that just kind of drops football and does the baseball thing and then just picks it up out of nowhere. You would think he was probably like the rawest of the bunch, but from a mechanical standpoint, he's probably one of the best in the country. And you've seen like the accuracy, the footwork, all that stuff on display, which has really helped him as far as solidifying himself as probably maybe the most highly accurate passer at the Elite 11. And I think something that Charles Power in his observations mentioned is that he's a cold-blooded performer who excels under the lights. And so that's about as good as of praise as you could possibly give somebody. But that's Matt Ponatowski. Bryson Beaver's a guy, got a lot of arm strength, can attack the intermediate to deep parts of the field, a lot of velocity on his throws, different arm angles. So he's got, intriguing traits too. When I talked about him, I would say he was probably my favorite of the bunch overall. But Jett Thomalla, he is also showing off his arm strength. He was being mentioned. I think they charted 20 throws from him, and he completed 18 of them. So he's doing a really good job as far as working from under center, being comfortable. Was apparently making throws look easy. That was kind of giving other guys there a little bit of a problem. That's always something that you want to see or hear about. And he flashed a good footwork. So with him, I think it's all about, we talk about Matt Ponitowski and the footwork and being mechanically sound. With Jett Thomalla, he hadn't really shown that to that same degree, but he's got a lot of the tools that you look for. So I think it's fantastic that he's kind of showing some of that stuff. He's continuing to kind of impress. You want to see growth from these guys, day one to day two. Obviously, I don't think anybody climbed as much as Jett Thomalla did, and I wouldn't be shocked if that continued. One of the most toolsy quarterbacks probably at this event, but he's just got to do the small nuanced things to be a little bit more consistent and help him. But I was glad to hear that he kind of made a jump or a leap on day two.
Well, it's a good sign for Alabama. I mean, obviously they spotted something in this guy. They targeted him. They went and they got him to flip, and he's part of Alabama's recruiting class. And guys, when Alabama gets recruits, you know that you can count on us. We're going to be right here telling you about it. There's some guys that are right on the verge of committing to the Crimson Tide. So when that happens, make sure that you swing right here to Cover Crimson, and we'll get you that information. You can also catch our show if you can't watch it on YouTube. You can get it in a lot of different places, Clint.
Yes, you can. You can now hear it in podcast form, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, really wherever you listen to your podcast. It's probably available. You just got to go on there and search Cover Crimson Podcast Network. And, even if you like watching us on YouTube and that's kind of how you like to consume the content, first of all, we very much appreciate it. But it would also be a huge help if you don't mind to just go and download the podcast, and that way you're getting it all that way as well. But it's also going to help us continue to kind of build and grow this thing as we're trying to do. So very much appreciate everybody who's been along for the ride so far. And really, man, we're just getting started. SEC Media Days is coming up here in a couple of weeks, a few weeks, I guess. Couldn't be more excited. Going to be starting to talk. We talked a little bit of football today, been kind of focused on recruiting, and we'll continue to do that tomorrow. We'll have, kind of what Alabama's looking for going into the weekend, who's all going to be on campus, previewing a lot of the recruiting stuff. But for now, we wanted to touch back a little bit back on the football side, the team side of it. And, I think we've done that.
All right. Well, guys, we're brought to you by Pearl River Resort, Philadelphia, Mississippi. We talk about them a lot. We appreciate them so much. Hour and a half from Tuscaloosa, 2 and change from Birmingham. But they got you covered. I mean, Vegas-style experience, table games and slots right there at Silver Star, Golden Moon Casino, the sports book at Golden Moon, which is Vegas-style, 20 big-screen TVs, full-size bar. You got an open desk if you need somebody to help you out. You got the kiosks if you want to do it yourself. Then you got the personal kiosk where you can put on any game and sit there and in-game, like during the game, but gambling. It's pretty fun. Also, Dancing Rabbit Golf Course, talked about them on the show already. It's the Augusta you can play, but the table games and the slots, then go over, hit Philip M. Steakhouse, play a little golf. Geyser Falls, the water park's open now. That's going strong. That's a really fun place to hang. And the spa, plus great acts like Jeff Dunham there this summer with all of his puppets. So we appreciate them. We appreciate you. Roll Tide, everybody, and we'll do it again tomorrow.
To Pearl River Resort.